A very good morning to everyone present here. I am Satish Anikhindi, Assistant Professor, RL Law College, Belagavi, and we have assembled here for a special session on the topic gender sensitization issues and challenges. Before I introduce the resource person, let me briefly introduce our college to all the participants here today. Raja Lakhamgowda Law College was established in the year 1939. It is one of the oldest colleges in the southern part of India and Karnataka. It has been almost more than 80 years, so to speak, and we have been imparting legal education throughout this area since all these years. To name a few, we have had distinguished alumni. To name a few, I won't be telling the names of everybody. We have had two former Chief Justices of India, namely Justice E.S. Venkataramaiah and Justice S. Rajendra Babu. Apart from the Chief Justices of India, we have had two Chief Justices of Kerala High Court, namely Justice V.S. Maimat and Justice S.R. Banurmat. In addition to that, the present Attorney General of India, Shri K.K. Venugopal, is a past student of this college, very proud alumnus. In addition to the former justices, at present, two sitting High Court judges of Karnataka High Court, Justice Sachin Magdum and Justice K.S. Hemlekha, happen to be students of this college. And we are really proud of this lineage, proud of the students who have really excelled in their areas. I'm sorry, I request students and participants to please mute their microphones. Thank you. Apart from, as I said, there is a long list of judges and advocates, public prosecutors, etc. I won't be having enough time to mention all of them. I would mention few people who, apart from legal area, that is from politics, for example, we have had two former chief ministers of Karnataka High Court, namely Shri S.R. Bommai and Shri J.H. Patel. And frequently, every year, whenever district judges are selected or subordinate judges are selected, our college to these judges, and we are really proud of the students, because good students make good college and not vice versa. Having introduced the college in brief, let me now come to the resource person of today's session. We are really happy, pleased and privileged to have Dr. Sapna S., Professor and Head of the Department, School of Law, Christ deemed to be University, Bengaluru. Madam has been prolific in her, whether it is presenting research papers in national as well as international seminars and conferences. Not only that, she has published research articles in various reputed journals, magazines, etc. She has been vocal about, among many other things, women rights. So creating awareness about the rights which women have, whether it is protection of, whether it is sexual offense in workplaces or domestic violence or any other rights regarding women and child. Madam has been vocal about all these things, and therefore I welcome ma'am from the entire Karnataka Law Society and Raja Lakhamgowda Law College family to have accepted our invitation and have been present here for this wonderful session. Thank you, ma'am. And with this, I hand over the microphone to Sapna ma'am. And before that, instruction to everybody. Once the session is over, the session is open for Q&A session. So all the participants, whatever questions you may have, you may kindly put it in the chat box, and madam will be happy to answer them. So with this, I hand over a microphone to Dr. Sapna S. Ma'am, the stage is yours. Please begin with the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Satish. And let me thank RL Law College for this warm invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. What I'm going to be doing is I'll just take you, all of you, through this journey of what is called as gender sensitization. And we are also going to be looking at why it is so relevant to be speaking about gender sensitization. How does it get placed in our own lives? And how do we look at it in our day-to-day life every day? How do we look at this whole part of gender sensitization? And when we are speaking about gender sensitization, I think we also need to be extremely mindful of the fact that as a university and for students, this assumes very crucial knowledge, and then we will see why it assumes a knowledge that is as crucial as that. Now, when I'm going to be telling you about gender sensitization, just to help you to park yourself on what we are doing, I will just take you through these slides, and I will just share these slides. Now, may I request Professor Satish to just transmit the presentation rights to me?
Sure. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, please try, ma'am, if you can share the screen.
Yeah, I'm able to do that.
I have selected that option so that anybody can share the screen. Just a minute.
Okay, so this is visible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is coming on the screen right now. Yes, ma'am, it is visible now.
Okay, so I think, yeah, so this is visible.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want all of you to be here with me in this slide. So as we take all of you along with this, now just take a look at this picture which is here. And I'm sure if all of you have been following the news lately and recently, this is one thing all of you must have definitely observed. And this is the photo of one Camille Vasquez, and she was the lawyer who was representing Johnny Depp. And when she represented Johnny Depp, she wins the case. Now, after she wins the case, this is the caption that goes on to say that, now, nobody ever really thought how she won the case. Nobody really went on to understand what went about in her winning this case, or what was the legal acumen that was necessary. But what went around for talks is that it was said, is she dating Johnny Depp? Now, that was in the news. And when she was asked about this, she dismissed the speculation of her being romantically involved with her client and actor Johnny Depp, saying that it is disappointing to hear this. And the reason why it is disappointing to hear this is because this is such a sexist comment to make. Now, it is from here I want to start this entire exercise and to tell you that just take a look at the difference in conversations. Just take a look at the difference in mindsets and the difference in perspectives when it relates to men and when it relates to women. And therefore, when we are speaking about this, I will also like to take you to the next slide, where every day we are able to see something like this. It is such general conversations, something that we see day in and day out, and we are able to connect to it so well. Now, say, for example, receiving unsolicited comments on your person meaning to say whether it could be on the way that the person looks, good, bad, or ugly, or fat or thin, or it could be the way that women have dressed up, or the way that people dress up. So therefore, Sheryl Sandberg, I'm sure all of you have heard of the name Sheryl Sandberg. She was the colleague of Mark Zuckerberg, and she wrote a very famous book called Lean In. And in this book, she mentions one very important attitude, and the whole book was anecdotal in its nature. And she specifically mentions about one incident and one thing where she says that when a woman in workplace declines to help the colleagues, people like her less and her career suffers. Because if you are a woman, you come with certain gender roles, and one of these gender roles is to be very accommodating, is to be extremely smiling, because that is what a woman is expected to do. You are just expected to smile and bear, because that has become your persona and that has become who you are as a character. So when a woman in workplace declines to help a colleague, she gets less appreciation and her career somewhere suffers. Now she's made to feel, I quote unquote, selfish, while a man on the other hand, who says that I'm busy and I'm sorry I can't do it, is said to be a person who's able to be assertive, and who's able to speak the mind out, and who's in complete control of what he's doing. So this is not something that I'm saying, but I'm able to connect to this. But can you imagine, this is being said by Sheryl Sandberg, and Sheryl Sandberg must be one of the most progressive women who had one of the most progressive companies, and she's listed in the Forbes most influential woman. Now she writes something like this, so you can just imagine. Or say, for example, it is so commonplace, it is so easy that these have almost become like, synonymous or acronyms and such common day language to call somebody, here's my good girl, or to call somebody sweetie or babe, etc., whatever may be the slang that has to be used. I mean, it is so commonplace, and it comes just out so easily. Or to speak about double standards. Now, what I mean by speaking about double standards is that it is so easy for us to do gender sensitization classes here in the open forum, and then go back home and to tell our own daughters, why did you come after 6 o'clock today, and never questioning the son coming in at either 9 o'clock or coming in at 9:30, it is perfectly fine. Now, these are what I mean by double standards. Now, having set this ground and having understood this, let me just take you to what are the objectives of this gender sensitization. So therefore, the reason why we are even doing this session, and let me congratulate your university, let me congratulate your institution for taking up a session like this, because I think this is something that is so relevant for all of us to understand and for all of us to be on the same page. So the reason why we are doing this session is because it has these important objectives. The first objective is that it encourages gendered conversations. And I will tell you what this gendered conversation is in just a minute when I go on to the next slide. It helps us to recognize the need for creating a positive and a conducive atmosphere. Now, you need to have an atmosphere which is conducive to you, because, mind you, the reason why all of us come to the university, all of us come to the institution is to study. And universities are those temples of learning, and universities are those spaces of social mobility like nothing else. So that is where we start, not just our profession, but we start our life. These are the places where we begin to make reputations for ourselves. We begin to build our character. And this is a character of confidence. This is a character of self-worth. And this is a character of what makes the identity of who I am. And if the foundation in these places is wrongly premised, mind you, you can have a very bad impact in your life when you go further. Not that it cannot be corrected, but the point is that you will go on a very sketchy foundation. You will go on a very dicey foundation, and that is not the way that it has to be. So it is important that it has to create a positive and a conducive atmosphere in the campus. The next one is that we all need to understand what is the individual and institutional roles. What is our responsibility? Now, as an individual, I have a responsibility to be extremely sensitive about diversity. And what do you mean by diversity? I don't just mean gender diversity. I mean diversity for people who are differently abled. I mean diversity for people who have lower level of learning. I mean diversity for people who are of the social and economic backward classes. I mean that kind of respect for everybody. Though we are not touching on that at this particular point of time, maybe some other time. So it is very important that I know my responsibility, and the institution who is conducting this are also aware of their responsibility. Now, what happens when we do this? When we do this, we kind of include everybody in our group. We don't leave anybody alone. And we tell the people that we are here as a team, we are here as one group, and therefore we will move forward. So when you do that, what is the impact of that? The impact of that is you are creating the most important social value in the society, and that is a non-discriminatory workplace, a non-discriminatory space. So what does a non-discriminatory space give you? The non-discriminatory space gives you the tremendous confidence to move forward, and it also brings huge progress to the institution. So this is one of the most fundamental and the basic thing that is required, that you need to create a non-discriminatory workplace. So when we are doing this gender sensitization, one of the most important objectives of gender sensitization is to see that we have the responsibility of creating a non-discriminatory workplace. And the last one that I'm going to be taking up is the law relating to sexual harassment of women at workplace. Maybe I will just do a small part of it because that is basically my domain area and that is my specialization. So I could not just, live it not doing it. So I'm just going to be touching upon that in a very, very brief way and the way that the time permits. So let me just go to the next part of it. So all of you are able to see here. So what we have in the slide here is this part, which is actually telling you there are two things. One is sex and the other is gender. So what is the difference between sex and gender? Sex is something that is assigned by birth, and that is biological in nature. So because it is biological in nature, generally we say there is a male and there is a female. And of course, then you have the other also. So basically, when you're looking about, when you say what is sex, it is biological in nature. Now, what is the meaning of gender? Now, gender is a social construction. It is a social construct. And who get into gender? Who make the gender? Generally, I have seen people saying, when they say that I'm a gender specialist, they mean that they are those who work for women issues. Now, I want all of you to understand that is a mistake which we should not make at all. Gender is never synonymous with women. Gender means it is all genders. It is that word which uses as an umbrella to mention all genders. So it could be male, female, it could be transgender. So gender is never about only women. It is never about only male and female. So gender is that identity, is that umbrella which is given to include all of them. It is for the male, female, and for the trans, or to whatever that you want to refer yourself to whatever that you want to identify yourself to. Now, having said that, why is this gender conversations important? Now, the reason why gendered conversations are important is because of three reasons. The first reason is that all of us understand that there are gender roles in our society. So what is the gender roles? The gender roles means the first thing that I am asked as a woman is that, do you know how to cook? Do you pack your own lunch? This is not something that I have seen any of my male colleagues being asked. It is just taken for granted that because you're a woman, you should know how to cook. And because you're a woman, it is your responsibility that you carry a pack back to the college. That is just the starting point. Now, to be told You need to be back home within 6 o'clock. You can't laugh aloud. You can't wear these kinds of dresses. It is difficult if you're a lawyer to find a boy for you. You have to get married. And if you talk loudly, you're going to face music in your in-laws' house. Now, these are what I mean by gender roles. Or on the other hand, it does not stop just at women, mind you. It is not that this is difficult only for a woman. Now, even for a man to be told, you are the sole bread earner of the family. You have to work. A man cannot sit at home. How can you cook? Irrespective of the fact that one of the best chefs in the world, one of the best chefs who mint money in the world are men, still you are told, how can you cook? How can you hold a broom? Men don't cry. Men don't show their emotions. Now, these are again gender roles. And then to be told, oh, this person is a trans and he can only do bad kind of work. He can only beg on the streets, or they generally are into prostitution. They just sell for sexual desires. Now, these are the things which are meant by So the meaning of gender roles is that irrespective of what I want, or irrespective of who I am, irrespective of what my gender identity is, the society decides what I should do. The society decides how I should live my life. These are what is called gender roles. So what does this gender roles lead to? These gender roles lead to what we call as stereotypes. What are stereotypes? They are patterns. I will just tell you one example. Now, this was way back, almost, about 7-8 years back. Now, there was this one help, a manual help who used to come. She was working in my office earlier. Now, because I was heading the institution, there were only 2 people who used to go first to the institution. Naturally, as the head of the institution, I had to go. And then she was the cleaner of that my chamber. So she had to come first. So basically, we were only the 2 people who used to go early to the institution. Now, in one of my conversations with her, I was just asking her about her family. And she says that she has 2 daughters. In that, one daughter has lost the husband, but that daughter is employed. So that way there is no problem with that daughter. But then she has another daughter who's married, whose husband does not work, does not bring a penny income to the house. He's an alcoholic and he beats her occasionally, not every day. Now, when she told me about her 2 daughters, she had a lot of sympathy to the daughter who was widowed, but who was financially independent, who was earning well, who had her own small identity in the society. She had a lot of sympathy for her. But she was very happy with her other daughter who was suffering from the abuse of her husband, from domestic abuse, having to take upon multiple responsibilities. She was very happy with her second daughter. So the reason why I'm speaking about stereotypes is to tell you that when we have gender roles and when we decide that women are dependent on a male for their survival, women need a male to have their identity, or women need a surname to protect themselves, either the father's name or the husband's name. That is when you're setting the stereotypes. So when you're setting the stereotypes, it is going to be very disrespectful. It is going to have adverse effect on one gender. Now, I'm not saying that it has bad effects only on women. Now, these have bad effects on men also. Because just imagine, maybe there could be so many men who want to take up cooking as their profession and they can't do it. There could be so many men in the workplaces who are suffering from maybe harassment, sexual or otherwise, but they're not able to speak about it in open. The reason is because men don't complain about that, because it is bad to them, to their manhood. So they don't speak about things like that. So these stereotypes are, it is not that they're bad only for women, but they're bad for all genders equally. So you can't set people in watertight compartments. You can't straitjacket them and tell that this is the way that they are. You can never generalize and you can never draw a pattern. So that is why these stereotypes are extremely bad. Now, the next one is about patriarchy. What all these things lead to is to a patriarchal society, is to a society where there is basically subjugation of women, where there is superiority of men, and where you're trying to teach your children, where you're trying to teach the younger generation two very bad qualities. One is subjugation. It is okay to subjugate somebody. It is okay to bulldoze somebody, and then giving another person a false sense of superiority. Both of this, mind you, are very, very wrong. Now, just take a look at law itself. Now, law says that now the natural guardian, say, for example, in case of divorce cases, when the parents are fighting fearlessly for the custody of the children, it is said that mother is a natural guardian. It is to the mother that you naturally need to give a child to. Now, isn't it bad to a man who can actually take care of the child equally well? Or say, for example, to think that all men are demons and all women are angels. It is not like that. This is a society, and this is a society which has both the genders, and both the genders are human beings. Both the genders have their fair share of things. So that is the reason why it is not so at all to think like that. So these are the three concepts that I wanted to tell all of you. One is the gender roles, and then you have the stereotypes, and then you have the patriarchy. So all these things can have adverse effect. And the reason why they can have adverse effect is because they will affect men and women in different way. Now, having said that, let me just move on to the next part, where we are trying to understand about the conversations. Now, why are communications relevant? So why are we saying that all these things, we should be very clear about it, even in our communications? Now, I think, a student who's raising the hand. Okay, so we have Bhumika who's raising the hand. So Bhumika, I think the deal is that I take questions at the end. So is that okay? Okay. So, right.
Yes, ma'am. You
so
can continue.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, I'm just moving on to the next one, which is speaking about communications is the manifestation of our thoughts. Because at the end of the day, what we communicate is about our thoughts. Communications don't exist in vacuum. Communications don't come out of the void. It does not come just like that. Communications and talk happens because somewhere we have the thoughts in us, and these thoughts remain in our subconscious. And therefore, these communications happen. And now we will see very quickly how these communications shape where we work, how this communication shape educational institutions, and the kind of the lessons that we are giving to our students. Now, maybe these are everyday communications. Now, say, for example, so that is why I have said that these are cliche conversations. So what are cliche conversations? These are something that we see day in and day out. This is something that is there all around us. Now, say, for example, to say that a woman should take care of the house. Men should go out to work. Women should be secretaries at work, or they should work in daycare centers, or maybe in educational institutions. Now, if you just take a look, now you will see that actually speaking, in educational institutions or in academics, not much at the professor level, not much at the university level or at the college level. But if you look at it at the school level, it is marginalized by women. So why is it marginalized by women? Because they are said to have certain characteristics like lot of patience, they can be very smiling, they can be good with children, and then most importantly, anyway, it is secondary income for them, and you anyway don't encourage women to be professionals, because if she becomes a professional, she's selfish, and who is going to take care of people at home? So there is marginalization of women in certain professions. Say, for example, the teaching profession, specifically if it is the kindergarten, or if it is the middle school or at the school level, or say, for example, if it is nursing, there also you have more number of women because of all these kinds of things. And then conversations which says women should be ladylike. So what is the meaning of women to be ladylike? You need to be a good mother, you need to be a good wife, you need to be a good daughter-in-law, and you need to be a good sister. So being all these things are ladylike, and what all these ladylike things mean is that maybe you need to adjust, maybe you need to know your limits, and you cannot go beyond your boundaries. And again, let me tell you, what I'm telling you are about cliche conversations. These are the kind of conversations which we have every day in our life. And I'm sure each one of us are able to connect to this so well. Men should be macho, men should be strong. So when you're going on saying men should be strong, you're depriving them of their power of emotion. You're depriving them of something that is so important to their own identity, taking away their own feelings, and it is not good for the men also. Now, these kind of cliche conversations, when we do everywhere, it almost takes that, that feeling of normalization. Or the mother doing all the work anyhow. Okay, am I audible? Did I lose out?
Yeah, there was a gap in between. Now we are
Just for a
audible.
moment.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for that insight. Okay, so like I was telling you, so what do these things actually do? Now, so like I was telling you, a child who has seen a child, say for example, a girl child or a boy child who sees domestic violence at home, if it is a boy, he grows up to think that it is perfectly fine for me to perpetrate this kind of violence to my wife tomorrow. And if it is a girl, it is possible that she will grow up to think, this is what life is, this is what I need to expect. And tomorrow, if my husband or if in my matrimonial home I have to suffer domestic violence, it is perfectly fine. So, and then when they come out in the educational institutions, when they come out in the learning, maybe they carry the same baggage with them. That is the reason why we are doing this gender sensitization. And when we are doing this gender sensitization is never about women. Gender sensitization is about respecting the differences, is about telling everybody this society is made up of men and women. It is made up of the transgender. There is diversity in the society, and this diversity is something that all of us need to identify. And you also need to appreciate this diversity and make it an inclusive place, whether it is at your home or whether it is in your workplace, whether it is in your school. It is important that you make this an inclusive diversity. Now, let me just tell you, in fact, now it is much better, because you see that diversity and inclusion policies are much better now. Now, say, for example, the company law makes it mandatory that you need to have women directors on board, both in the listed companies as well as in the public companies. So that is now made a mandate under the corporate law. Or say, for example, 30% reservation, even in the panchayat level. And then you need to have women reservations. So that way, legislatively, changes have been brought about in order to bring about this inclusion strategies. in order to give that encouragement to women and tell her that you now have inclusion strategies and therefore you can come. But for this or say, for example, property law also, the Hindu law has changed to make women the co-partner in the property, co-partner in the ancestral property, and not just son as the co-partner. So now women or the daughters are on par with co-partners. Or say, for example, now you have a mother's name in the application. So that is the reason why you write down the mother's name. And it is not just the father's name, even when we are doing the educational institution applications. So to a big extent, things have changed, but there's a long way to go. And one of the things that research says is that where are women in the leadership position? Now, women are working, no doubt, but still there is marginalization. You have very less women in the leadership positions, including the academic institutions, including every other organization. You have very less women who's sitting at the control, who's trying to make decisions. Now, why do these things happen? Is it connected with our stereotypes? Is it connected with our patriarchy? And is it connected with our gender roles? The answer to all these things is an affirmative. The answer to all these things is yes. It's a big, big yes. Now, let me tell you how. Now, research has found out that as women, when they have to apply for leadership positions, because of the way that they are cultured, because of the way that they are taught at home, they find it very difficult on their own to volunteer and to apply for leadership positions unless they are pushed. Now, this is not something that is being told by me or is just being told and on off. This is told by the research. There is statistics. It is data driven when I'm telling that. The reason why it is so is because of a concept which is called sticky floor. Now, the theory of sticky floor means that women on their own find it difficult to confidently say, I want to be the boss and I want to get into leadership positions. So that is the reason why it is right to have reservations for women. Now, how do these kinds of things affect us? These kinds of things affect us because they bring down the feeling of self-worth. They get adjusted to the normalization because normalization is to adjust. Normalization is to accommodate. Normalization is to be a woman. And to be a woman means that you can be at home, take care of your children, take care of your husband, take care of people at home. And if you're getting a work somewhere, it is only out of your luck that you're able to do. Now, these kinds of things, like I've been telling you, affects both men and women equally. So that is why gender stereotypes, the patriarchy, and the gender roles have a huge role to play in what we are and how the society is shaped. Now, I had this other part which I will just share with you, but this I will go a little later on because I will do this when I'm doing the Sexual Harassment Act. So now let me just go to this. Now, let me just go to this first case, which has been my experience. Okay, so I think I will just move on to this law relating to sexual harassment now that we have come to it. Professor Satish, how many more minutes do I have? Do I have it till 11 o'clock?
Yeah, ma'am, you can take your time, no problem.
Okay, so I think I will just take another 15 minutes. And
Sure.
After this, I will just move on to this law relating to sexual harassment. Okay, so what we just did till now is to just get you to what is the meaning of gender sensitization and why gender sensitization is important. Now, if I have quickly, if I'll have to summarize all that I told just now just understand that the society is not equal. We don't live in a society which is equal. Now, this is not true only for India, or this is not true only for our society. This is true everywhere across the globe. This is a global phenomenon. We don't live in an equal society. I'm not looking at other diversities, but I'm just looking at gender diversity. Male, women, male, female, transgender is concerned, there is absolutely no equality. So this society does not come with equality. What is important for you as students to understand? As students and as educational institutions, we need to understand that diversity exists in nature. Diversity exists in society. The reason why women behave like that is because of her upbringing, is because of her culture. So you need to understand where that woman is coming from, where she is talking or she is behaving the way that she is behaving. Same so for men. In order now making statements like boys will be boys, men will be men. It is perfectly okay for somebody to have two extramarital affairs. It is extremely okay for somebody to behave boyish. No, this is something that we have to say no to and understand that no, it does not happen like that. Now, it is important that we understand the perspectives and then tell that these are the things which we should put a full stop to, and it cannot happen. But the way the society is, it is so deep rooted. It is going to take a lot of efforts on our part to change the mindset, but it is on the way and it is something that can be done. Now, the next one is that now there was this one circular by Karnataka government almost about a decade back. This was the time when the ITS sector had just come. And the point was that, can we allow women to work after 6 o'clock? Now, the government took it upon themselves. They made the decision that women cannot work after 6 o'clock because it is going to be very unsafe for her to work after 6 o'clock. Now, this was a protectionist attitude of the government, which actually resulted in depriving a woman of equality of opportunity to employment. There was a hue and cry about it, and ultimately the government had to change its circular, which allowed women can be allowed to work at night, provided transportation is provided and security is provided. So it does not help if you say, we are thinking about women's security and therefore we are not allowing her to work. If you are so concerned about the security, you should provide that safety measure. You should provide that security. Now, one very important case that I want to share with you, this was a case which happened in Kerala. Now, what used to happen is that all of you are aware of the linemen. Have you all seen the electric poles? Now, these electric poles are quite tall, isn't it? Now, these electric poles, if they have to repair the electric poles or do something with it, because it is tall, it is men who would be linemen. So you never had anything like line person. Just like the way now we are progressive enough not to say chairman, we always say chairperson. So you don't use the word chairman anymore. So like that, you don't have anything like line person. It is called linemen only. Those people who climb up the poles, who try to do all those things on the poles and who get down. In Kerala, what had happened was that they had called for application for the job of this lineman. Now, many of them applied, but they never imagined that one woman would apply. Now, a woman applied for this job and they did not know what to do about it because they had never thought that, a woman can climb poles and she will apply for this. Now, they did not give her the job. She goes to the court and ultimately this goes to the High Court of Kerala. Now, in the Kerala High Court, their argument was that this required climbing. There is a lot of risk that is involved and a woman would not be able to do that. The Kerala High Court said just one thing. Understandable that you have to work at heights. Understandable that somebody would have to climb. But have you ever heard of something called ladders? Who is asking you to climb the wall? Why can't you have ladders and then get up there? So if you have to get up on the ladder, it makes little sense and little significance whether it's a man who's climbing the ladder or it's a woman who's climbing the ladder. So these are the kinds of the mindset changes that is slowly being brought. And I'm sure all of you have followed that recent case of Nisha, where it was in the army, the short service commission and the permanent commission for women, how it was not allowed for a very long period of time. Or say, for example, for jet, for fighter planes, they were not allowed for a very long period of time, but that also has been changed to a big extent. Now, in fact, I was doing this one case on gender discrimination in one government organization where it deals only with mining engineers. Now, what used to happen with this mining engineers is that they used to get crores of rupees consultancy. Whenever these consultancies used to come, it always used to be the male members or the male professor's name, which used to be put on top, and then women used to be put down. So in the way of sharing the consultancy amount, that would create a difference. Now, when asked, the explanation was that because you have to go on field, you have to go to the mines. A woman might not be able to go because she has family responsibilities. She did not tell that. She did not opt for that. Somebody else made the decision for her. So these are the kinds of unconscious bias which creates, if it is with respect to gender, stereotypes, and patriarchy. So that is why it is important for us, when we are in a setup like a university, when we are in a setup like an educational institution, first thing to understand that I know we come from different circumstances. I know it will be difficult. The first thing is that you might have to fight in your own homes, but then it is perfectly fine. All of us are equal. All of us have our own identity. So as a woman, if I have to drive a truck and be a truck driver, it is my choice. As a boy, if you want to take up cooking and you want to become a chef or put on your nail polish, it is perfectly up to you. Each one of us come with our identity, and our identity is what defines us. At the end of the day, it is for us to create equal level playing fields. It is for us to understand in our own heads that we are equal and we will have the same courage like anybody else to go in this way. So this is what gender sensitization programs should do to each one of us. It should not bring about the differentiation between men and women. We should not try to say men are superior or women are superior. We should not try to say that men are bad and women are innocent. That is never the objective of a gender sensitization session. Gender sensitization sessions are about equality. Gender sensitization sessions are about identifying the difference. Now, we bring differential aspect. Now, women have always been said to be emotional in their approach, and that is why it was said they cannot have leadership positions. They will not be good in leadership positions. But today, the corporate world says if there is one currency which sells in the corporate world, and that is empathy. And women are known to have empathy like no other gender. So that is the best thing that a woman can get across to the table. Maybe a man can get across to the table his way of working in a bold way. So each one of us come with our own intrinsic human value, and each one of us come onto the table to give the best to the organization, because an organization cannot have only boldness. With the boldness, you require empathy. With empathy, you require kindness and compassion. This together makes up any ecosystem. And therefore, this is what gender sensitization should convey to each one of us. I will just take another 5 minutes or 6 minutes maximum to tell you about sexual harassment when we do the gender sensitization. I'm sure all of you are aware that we have the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, which is acronymed as the POSH Act of 2013. Now, what is this POSH Act of 2013? Now, basically, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the law, but I will just tell you out of my own experience. I'm on the board of many of the POSH committees as the external expert. So I will just tell you out of my experience about this POSH Act. Now, about this POSH Act, it does not take something very serious to put this sexual harassment case into motion. It takes small things, and these are small things, they are subtle things which we have to be very careful about. Use of language, the way that you speak to another person, your body language, these are very subtle. But mind you, if it is unwelcome, the person on the other hand do not want your solicitation, do not want you to patronize them, you will need to keep away. Now, I'm telling this not just for boys, but I'm telling this for girl students too. I think each one of us need to have the responsibility to understand the person on the opposite side is a human being. The way that you demand respect, you also need to know how you give respect. So use of language, cannot be sexist in nature, cannot be gendered in nature. So it is okay for you to say you're lazy, but you can't say you're lazy, no wonder you're a boomer. You can't say that. It is wrong to say that. Or you can't say you want to imply. So you can't say things like that. So in your conversations, you have to measure and mind your gender and the way they use your language. Now, the next part I will quickly take you to is about this. Today, everything is on the digital media. And when everything is on the digital media, the way that you communicate on the digital media, on your WhatsApp, on your Twitter, on your Facebook, anywhere in the social media, this will have to come with a sense of responsibility. It will have to come with a sense of understanding of what you're doing. I'm sure all of you just saw that. I'm sure all of you just heard that Saurav Ganguly made a comment on the women's cricket team, and he isn't for a lot of flack. So when we are speaking something on the social media, it is important that we need to be extremely careful. We need to be extremely responsible. Let anonymity not create courage, and let this courage not be the kind of the courage which is unreasonable. So let it not create a false sense of courage or a false sense of valor only because we think that it is okay, nobody will observe and we will get away with it. So that is another thing that we have to mind. The next one is about gossip. We can't gossip about things which are gendered in nature. We can't put one gender down. We can't put another gender up. I'm not even speaking about this in terms of men, women. I'm speaking about this in terms of men, women, and trans. This is something that need not apply only to women. You cannot speak about men also like that. Women can also not speak about their own gender like that. And you can't speak about other gender. So that is something that we have to be very careful when we are doing conversations. WhatsApp messages, you have to mind, and you can't say that I said that, but I did not mean what I said. I had no intention of saying what I did. So whenever you put anything on WhatsApp message, just like any other message, that will form digital evidence, and you need to be careful about it. In fact, in my sexual harassment case, at least in 3 cases, I have myself written down findings where I have said, this person is guilty of perpetrating sexual harassment. It was online sexual harassment because I took out the evidence from WhatsApp. WhatsApp is equally official and it can be used as evidence specifically in these cases, and that is something that all of us have to be very careful and mindful about. You can't use sexist comment, because when you start using sexist comment, ultimately what happens is that you end up putting another gender down, and that is absolute no. That is non-negotiable and that is not acceptable. So what I have in the last slide is this, where I'm saying that gender sensitization is never about women. It is never about putting the men down. It is never about superiority of one gender or subjugation of another gender. It is a whole. It is a complete picture. And what makes a complete picture? It is diversity and inclusion, which makes a complete picture. So at the end of this, at the cost of being repetitive, let me tell you the reason why we need to have gender sensitization is to go back to our first lesson. We need to respect everybody who are there around us, and that is a respect which we have to give to diversity, and it is only when we have diversity we have inclusion. So this basically is the lesson about gender sensitization. So with this, thank you so much for this patient hearing to all of you, and I will now give it to Professor Satish.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This was such an enlightening session, if not an eye-opener to most of us. And before I open the session for Q&A, I would like to say one thing which might be relevant here. I remember reading in news yesterday or 2 days ago, where one of the female assistant professors of St. Xavier's University was forced to resign because apparently she had posted so-called inappropriate pictures on her Instagram story, which was a private Instagram story only accessible to her friends. But somehow a father of a student was offended by this, and he made an official complaint, and the management of the university forced her to resign. So I think this might pitch in somewhere in this gender sensitization issue, because if it was a male professor, I'm sure nobody would have bat an eyelid. So having said this, I request all the participants, if you have any specific questions to ma'am, you can please either put it in chat box or you can unmute and put your question. Let me see if the chat is. Yeah, I have just switched on the button, so you can put your questions, if any, in the chat box, or you may unmute yourself and ask your question. Yeah, if I get that there are no questions here, so if I may proceed, this was really a wonderful session, ma'am. We are really privileged to have you with us today, in spite of your busy schedule. I, from on behalf of the Karnataka Law Society, Raja Lakhamgowda Law College, our principal sir, NAC coordinator, Dr. Samina Beg, and all other staff members, all other students, I really thank you for accepting our invitation and being with us and sharing your thoughts on this particular topic. I get there is a question from Nivedita Dixit. Yes, Nivedita, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes. Ma'am, it was really great hearing to you. First of all, I thank you for that. The second one is like we hear like Indira Nui being at such a position, having some issues with the gender sensitization. So what is that we can do at the grassroots level, maybe at the education system or at the institution level, so that actually it is not taken for a disadvantage? Because like we see that in the name of gender sensitization, we also make scapegoat of male folk. So it is like how to balance that actually.
See, so that is why in all my gender sensitization sessions, the first thing that I tell everybody is that, for God's sake, gender is not women. Never ever, put the genders down. So that's why I said, the whole objective of this session is equality. So it's such a valid question that you asked. How can you do that at the grassroots level? Now, what you need to do at the grassroots level is that it is not just about women. I think you have to drive the point home of equality. You have to tell people very clearly that it is not about women, it is not about men, but it is about equality that should exist in the society. Now the reason why you have gender specific laws, the reason why you have women specific laws is because of the historical abuse that the women faced. Now, say for example, it was not men who were made to do sati. It was women who went into the funeral pyre. Now it was women who lost the property. It was women who was questioned if her husband died. So, women have traditionally faced a lot of flack and historical abuse. In order to correct this historical abuse, we have laws which specifically help women. But that does not mean that when we are teaching to students, we have to tell them that women are superior or women can do no wrong or they can never commit any crime. What has to be told to them right from the beginning is that it is about equality. We are many genders, and every gender needs to come with that sense of equality. So to me, I basically feel that equality is one thing that you have to say. The next one is that you should make people understand, because many times people say, now if you're saying equality, why should women be given reservation? Why do you give all this specific reservation? Now that is where we have to make them understand that equality is there, but reservation is required, because if you have neutral policies, if you have neutral laws, these neutral laws will not give you substantive equality. It will not give you equity. In order to have this equity, you need to bring about this reservation. Reservation is a constitutional guarantee that is given under Article 15 and 16, which speaks about affirmative action. So it is good to have affirmative action. So basically, Nivedita, the first thing that I think you need to have in your mind is about equality. Now, I would encourage you to read a lot of Ruth Ginsburg judgment. She was, the judge of the US Supreme Court. Now, even though she was, she helped women, she never said that, you have to be partial to women. She came from that whole concept of equality. So just read that and then you will understand. But this is a very valid question and I'm glad that you asked. So Nivedita, did that,
so much for
yeah, did that answer your clarity?
Yes,
Manoj
ma'am, yes.
Joshi, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, you were talking. I guess I will start off my question. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Manoj.
Yeah. Actually, you were talking about the stereotypes. As per my observation, I have seen that the older generation, the boomers, the so-called, has this more pre-notions about this non agreeing with the notions of the sexual and gender and all the other things. But as we see that in the Zoomers or the millennials, it is less and less observed. So what happens is that the Zoomers are the influencing on the millennials or the boomers. So what happens here? How do you, I mean, take care of it? The source. I mean, it will pass obviously. Then 1% to 1%, elders will always try to tell you something or their own notions. But how do you differentiate between acknowledging that as well and moving forward?
Yeah, I'll just tell you. I mean, I'm able to connect this so well, I mean, with all of our lives for that matter. But that is something that, I deal with my own family day in and day out. I mean, in the sense that, I have a daughter who's now studying in her first PUC. So that means, she's a teenager. And then we live in an extended family with my in-laws and with my parents. So I always see this, this generation gap about, there's a difference in the way that my son is addressed and difference in the way that my daughter is addressed. I always hear this cliche conversation from my elders at home who always tell me that she's a girl and tell her that, she has to be careful because she has to go to somebody's house. But if it is perfectly okay for my son to be doing what he is doing because, he's a boy. So you're absolutely right. Now, I don't know about how it can be done in a general way because I think this is, specific mindset and the family upbringing, so many things that get into that. But basically what I do is that I always, tell my, my mother, the female elders at home. I don't have this problem with the male elders at home, but with the female elders at home that now things have changed and it is perfectly okay that we don't have to groom a girl for marriage. The first thing is that she has to study. And I'm glad that you asked this question because I had forgotten to tell you. Now, we are talking so much about this sensitization and there are deep-rooted stereotypes. So what is that one way by which you can collapse this deep-rooted stereotype? How can you come out of that stereotype? The only way that you can do it is through education, is through awareness. Like the way we are having these conversations, like the way we are having these dialogues. I think we need to have these dialogues at home, where you cannot question a woman's status. She could be a divorced person, she could be a widow, she could be anything, but that doesn't mean that, the stigma gets attached to her. As it is easy for a man to get separated from his wife, it should also be so for a woman who's not able to adjust with her husband. Now, it is taboo to talk about problems in the marriage for a girl. That's the reason why so many suicides takes place. That's the reason why so many women within 7 years of marriage commit suicide. The reason is because they're not even able to talk openly. Just like the way that you said, in her own home, she has been told that in marriage, you should adjust. Because if you come out of the family, then, people will talk bad about you. Society will talk bad about you. But as youngsters, I think you have a huge role to play by telling your elders at home, no, the society has changed. Times have changed. It is perfectly okay for women to go out and work. It is okay for her to drive a car late at night. It is okay for her to walk into a restaurant alone. It does not, get into her character. and don't think that, oh, she's of a bad character because she's doing that. So I think, we should slowly bring about that mindset change.
Thank you, ma'am.
If there are no questions from anybody, we can conclude this session. Arpita, yeah, sure, go ahead.
In nowadays, girls are taking advantage by fake complaints to harass men. So, what shall be the initiative by rule of law so that men can get equal importance as well? As you said, girls have many rights to overcome the historical aspects which are gone through by every historical times. Girls, women are being harassed to practice sati and all. So, what shall you suggest to make some rule of law so that men don't get harassed day by day? Nowadays, many complaints are going on.
Yeah, Arpita, I'll just take that and I'll tell you where you're coming from. See, basically, tell me which law is not abused. Which law is not abused? Every law is abused. Everybody find loopholes in law. Every law is abused. We talk about women abusing the law. The reason is because when you make a law for them, you have this mindset that, oh, you're doing a big thing to them. Oh, you're giving them something. So that is where, this mindset is coming from, where we say that, oh, women is abusing the law. And so far as women abusing the law is concerned, it is not that they can just do whatever they want. It is not that a woman files a sexual harassment case and she gets away with it. It does not happen so. The act itself makes it very clear that you have one provision for frivolous complaint. And in that frivolous complaint, there is a provision in the law itself which says that if a complaint by a woman is frivolous, then she will have to face the consequence for that. She will have to face the penalty for that. So it is not that, it is not there. It is always there. But because we have the mindset that, oh, by making her a co-partner, we have done a big thing. Why don't people speak about when the laws are abused? CRPC is abused time and again. CPC is abused time and again. Contract law is violated time and again. Why don't we speak about it? The minute a woman abuses a law, or a woman even, takes to the law, we think that it is abuse of the law. No, it is not so. Every law is abused, not just by women, but by everybody. Every law is abused. And so far as men being victimized is concerned, that happens, and there is a law for that. So it is perfectly fine to go under that law, get a good lawyer, have your evidence right, and then argue that in the court. But to say a woman is the only person abusing the law would not be right. So I have this one thing on the chat box from Chetan Kumar, who says, how can we overcome from the problems that we are facing even in the 21st century, and what is your opinion? So I think, Chetan, you are mentioning about the gender stereotypes. Like I was just telling to one of the others here, Manoj, I was just telling to, I think it is up to us to bring about the mindset changes. If we are convinced about what we are doing, I'm sure we should be able to convince others and tell them that you have to get away from that very traditional and conventional attitude and try to be more progressive. And understand, if you're not progressive, the society is not going to progress. That is the reason why we are talking about these issues, not just in small forums like this. The World Economic Forum is talking about this issue, IMF is talking about this issue, and you have a whole literature which is called Gender Economics and Development. It is all about how you integrate gender. So we will be left behind, and it is high time we move forward.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Due to paucity of time, we are not open to questions anymore. Sorry for that. One instruction to all the participants: feedback link. A link to the feedback form has been shared in the chat box. So kindly fill that feedback form, and your e-certificates will be generated automatically. You will receive them in your emails. So again, on behalf of our society and our college and our principal sir and all the staff members, I heartily thank Dr. Sapna S. Ma'am for taking time out from her busy schedule and sharing with her thoughts with us today. Thank you so much, ma'am. We are really privileged to have with you. I'm sure we will. I look forward to have such more sessions with you in future. And if possible, we can have you physically in our college. It would be much better than an online session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So that is why we end the session here. Thank you all the participants for joining in. We will meet again very soon next time. Thank you so much.